My name is Paul Beach, and I wish to share with you this morning some excerpts from this wonderful little book called The Young People's History of Maine, written by George J. Varney. Let me give you a quick summary of the provenance of this. It was found in the Unitarian Universalist Church in Kennebunk at the time when a committee decided to clear out all of the old books that had been there from the time that structure was the town library. And some of them got rescued from the dumpster, and this was one of them. Young People's History of Maine. My young friends will remember that Christopher Columbus made his famous voyage of discovery in 1492. I have never forgotten it myself since I learned the little rhyme. In 1492, Columbus crossed the ocean blue. On this voyage, he discovered islands only and did not reach the great western continent until his third voyage, which was made in 1498. But John Cabot and his son, Sebastian, were before him here, for they had sailed along the coast from Newfoundland to the Armagh Sound the year previous, and they took possession of the country in the name of the English sovereign. But England soon became so busy with affairs at home that she made no attempt to settle the new country for nearly 100 years. Yet, I should here tell you of other visits made long before this time. There have been certain marks found on the rocks of Monhegan Island and at one or two points on the mainland, which are thought to show that the Norwegians, who peopled Iceland and Greenland, also visited the coast of Maine about the year 990 or later. The French navigator in 1524 by Gomez, a Spaniard, and in 1525, and by an Englishman named Root, and in 1527, again in 1556, a Catholic priest named André Trevet sailed in a French ship along the whole coast, spending several days in Penobscot Bay, where he held conferences with the natives. Yet all these belong to the ancient period, and nothing came of them. You have now learned of 4 famous voyages to this coast, and none of them formed any settlement which was sustained. But when the ships returned, their companies showed that many curious things that they had brought and told such wonderful stories of what they had seen that a great many people became interested in that far-off country beyond the sunset. So in 1606, a number of noblemen, gentlemen, and merchants belonging about London and Plymouth in England joined themselves together for the purpose of sending out colonies and of making Christians of the heathen natives. The association was called the North and South Virginia Company, and King James granted to it all the territory between the 34th and the 45th degrees of north latitude. The London men chose for their portion the division south of the Hudson River, while those of the Plymouth took the north part of the mouth of that river. In August of the same year, the Plymouth Company sent out 2 ships under Thomas Hanman, one of the company to make a settlement in Sagadahoe, but one of the vessels was captured by the Spaniards, and the other, after a short stay on the coast, returned to England. In December, the London Company sent out 3 ships with planters, and those became the founders of Jamestown in Virginia. In June of the next year, the Plymouth Company again sent out 2 vessels with 120 colonists. The leader of the expedition was Captain George Popham, brother of Lord John Popham, Chief Justice of England. His ship was named the Gift of God. On Wednesday, the 29th day of August, 1607, the colonists went on shore and engaged in a religious service led by Richard Seymour, their chaplain. The Plymouth Company had given them a sealed package containing the laws and the list of officers for the government of the colony. And after the service, this was opened and read. They found that Captain George Popham was their president and Captain Raleigh Gilbert, admiral. Then they went to work building a fort, storehouse, and dwellings, and even a vessel. Digby, a ship carpenter from London, was the master builder. She was called Virginia, and her size was 30 tons. Her first voyage was made the next spring to Virginia and thence to England. Therefore, the Kennebunkport River, which has since sent out so many vessels, has the honor of producing the first vessel built by English hands in America. While the colonists were erecting their dwellings, Captain Gilbert and his crew explored the coast, going through Casco Bay quite to Cape Elizabeth. He next ascended the river on which the settlement was made, where he saw many natives and visited one of their villages. He offered them tobacco in exchange for their skins. But these that they brought were so poor that he would not purchase them. This made the Indians angry, and the English barely got away without a serious fight. The natives of Maine were taller than the average white man. And if no stronger, they were usually more agile. Their complexion was a copper brown, and their black coarse hair usually hung in a long mass over their backs, though the woman's was sometimes braided, while the man's was more frequently cut short over the forehead, and the remainder tied in a knot on the top or the back of the head. They had broad, beardless faces, retreating foreheads, prominent cheekbones, small, glistening black eyes, and large white teeth. Many of their women were of comely face and figure, and some of them would have been almost handsome had they been cleanly. Yet both women and men were generally morose in the countenance and manner. In the summer, the dress of men and women was rarely more than a girdle of leather, having a short skirt or fringe below the waist, with the addition of moccasins, if they were hunting or traveling. In the winter, the buckskins, leggings, and mantle of fur formed a warmer attire. But there were some families so poor that they were at times obligated to wear hard, furless skins, even in cold weather. They had a way of tanning and dressing skins, which made them very soft and pliable. One substance used in this process was the oil prepared from the brains of animals. The household work and cultivation of the soil was left almost wholly to the women and children. Only labor of this sort, which the warriors undertook, was the raising of their tobacco. I have now given you an account of the Indians as they were when the English first came to the country. But from that time, their habits and customs began to change. The traders soon supplied them with domestic utensils, cloths, and guns, so that they were able to obtain game and cook their food with more ease, and to dress themselves more comfortably. The French mingled with the natives like brothers, and some of them, with their usual easy habit, even took Indian women for their wives. Very soon, French Jesuits were in all of their villages, and before the year 1720, they had nearly all become Roman Catholics. Therefore, in any war that arose between the English and the French, the Indians, if they took any part, were sure to be on the side of the French. Neither did the Jesuits confine themselves to the religious instructions of the natives, but they were ever willing agents of the French government to incite the Indians to hostility against the English settlers. Doubtless, a principal reason for the continued peaceable conduct of the natives toward the English were found in the wars among themselves and the pestilence with which they were often visited. In 1614, when Captain Smith visited the coast, the native population of Maine must have been nearly 30,000. In the war which happened soon after, the Warnocks had been almost destroyed, and Tarratines were lost severely. Then the plague came, working fearful havoc from Penobscot to Cape Cod. Following these were the wars with the Mohawk Indians, which raged at intervals for about half a century, while the smallpox became a frequent scourge. From those from those causes, their number has fallen before the year 1675 to about 12,000. Some of the tribes did not at first join the hostilities against the English. Among these were the Penobscot Indians and all those to the eastward, and the Pentacooks in New Hampshire. At length, the alarm sounded. This was in 1675. The first blow of King Philip's War was struck. The Massachusetts authorities immediately sent the news to those of Maine with the advice that the Indians should be deprived of their guns and knives. Some of the leading residents of Sagadahoc, or Lower Kennebunkport, immediately visited the Indians near them and prevailed upon them to give up a few of their guns. They gave them many presents and so won their favor. That Mohotormet, the old cannabis, made a dance in honor of the agreement of peace between them. In 1675, on the 12th of September, the savages burned the house of John Wakely near the mouth of the Penobscot River in Falmouth. The smoke and the flames were seen at Casco Neck in Portland, and a party started at once for their relief. They were too late. The bodies of 7 persons lay among the smoking ruins, half burned, shockingly mangled. It proved that 2 others, a girl of 11 years and a young child, had been carried away. None knew what became of the child. The poor girl, whose name was Elizabeth, now left without father, mother, brother, or sister, was forced to traverse the wilderness through long and tedious months in the company of the murderers of her relatives. At 4 o'clock, the moon set, and then the savages contrived another mode of attack. They built up on the forward end of the ox cart a tier of lumber, then filled the body with shavings, birch bark, and sticks. A number of them took hold of the tongue where they were protected by the screen of lumber and pushed the cart toward the house. They meant to set the house on fire and kill the people as they ran out. 50 persons were crowded in this building, most of them women and children. The cart was steadily approaching. Nearer and nearer it came. Already the tiny tongues of flame gleamed through the mass, and the voices of the besieged grew hushed with fear, or some excited girl screamed in frenzy. But the cart came steadily on. One wheel drops into the gutter, and the cart swings about. The savages who hold the tongue are in view, and the muskets of the English ring out in the still night. Several of the assailants dropped to the ground, and the remainder ran away, leaving the load of burning sticks to light up the field. Moving ahead to 1744. In the spring, France joined Spain in the war which she was carrying on against the English. As soon as the French subjects in America heard of this, they began to plot against the English colonies. Nova Scotia was now in the possession of the English, and here the French and the Indians made their first attacks. Still in 1744, during the winter, a rumor that the French were preparing to join the Indians and fell upon some of the towns caused the further addition of about 400 men to the garrisons from Massachusetts, together with 4 small field pieces and a swivel. But no attempt was made by the enemy, and though greatly distressed, the inhabitants had not to mourn their friends fallen or property destroyed. This is 1749. One party attacked Wiscasset, setting some of the houses on fire and taking 2 prisoners. Another party went to Parker's Island at the mouth of the Kennebec. Coming to a house just within call of the fort, they were discovered and dared not approach nearer, for they feared the cannon with which the garrisons were now generally supplied. In 1751, hardly the afflicted settlers of Maine joined again the broken links of businesses when the actions of the French filled them with fresh alarm. Among the captures of the last war were 2 families of children taken in Frankfurt and now Dresden. Their fathers visited Canada in search of them, finding the children in Montreal to their great delight. After years of bloody strife, and the sun of the eastern tribes had set in darkness, and the power which had urged them to the useless wars was overthrown, it was a feeling of relief that we turn from scenes of savage cruelty to the fields of peace and prosperity. Let me finish with this note from 1814. There ensued a great deal of smuggling between the American and British lines, which were divided by the Penobscot, now under control of the enemy. The British wanted cattle and provisions of all kinds for the troops, and our oak, pine, and lumber to build vessels on the Bay of Fundy or to transport to sea. Other people needed the clothing, sugar, molasses, and utensils which merchantmen brought into Castine. On December 24th, 1814, a treaty of peace between Great Britain and the United States was signed at Ghent. But before the news had reached this country, General Jackson had won his famous victory in New Orleans. After this, there were no further depredations in Maine. The most of the points they had held were soon deserted by the enemy, Castine being retained till the last. And finally, when, when the war was over, there was found to be great increase in profanity, Sabbath breaking, and intemperance. Thoughtful people were shocked at the extent and safety and comfort of the community were seriously diminished. It was chiefly the dismissal of the militia from active service in the district and the return of soldiers from the National Army, which had produced this dangerous and disagreeable condition of morals. For men were often made dissolute by the idle life of camps, especially when discipline is loose and intoxicating liquors freely dispensed. The state of societies stimulated the religious associations of more earnest effort for the good of souls.